Today's episode is strictly for all my beginner bag makers out there. If you're a dressmaker, lucky you, you are going to learn something new today. And if you're further up in bag making, do not hesitate to share this video to somebody who needs it. And if you're a bag maker, good for you, you are in the right place, because today you are going to make your very first bag. Now guys, I want you to know that you do not need a sewing machine in order to start making bags. But for today's episode, we are going to need a sewing machine, okay? I am going to make another video showing you guys that you do not need a sewing machine in order to start making bags. In today's episode, we are going to be making a simple tote bag. Now guys, this bag is going to be simple and straight to the point, okay? No closure whatsoever, no zipper, no magnetic lock, no pocket. We are not making straps, no design whatsoever. We are just using straight stitches, and it is extremely simple. We are just going to make that in order to warm up our body and everything, okay? So let me show you guys the bag. It's right here, and this is what it looks like. I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you see? So guys, I did not make a strap. We are not making a strap. Next episode, maybe when we make it again, we are going to be making straps. But for today, we are not making strap. We are just using the normal webbing. There is no pocket inside of it. Can you guys see? No pockets whatsoever. It is just a simple bag. There is no pockets outside too. And I made it small. I like that it is super small. It's cute. I have a big tote bag, and most of the times I don't need a big tote bag. So I decided to make a small one so I can use a small one when I need to, okay? And it is super duper cute. I like that. You know, I can just let me move this away so you guys can see. I don't know if you guys can see that. Can you guys see how cute it is? So guys, I just like that about it. Let me move my sit right here. Okay, I am back. Alright guys, I just like that about it. I like that about this bag. It is small, it is super duper cute, it is straightforward, it is easy, and it is good to go, okay? So if you're a beginner, this project is very, very good for you. I prefer and I would advise you to start with this first in order to warm up and get used to your sewing machine. Start with straight stitches, and without further ado guys, let us get into the video.
For my main fabric, I am using Ankara. Half a yard is more than enough. For my lining, I am using velvet. It is thick and I do not need to use an interfacing for it. If you are using a softer fabric, use an interfacing to stabilize it. And the interfacing for the main fabric is a fusible fleece, aka wadding or breast pad, as we all know it here. You also need your ironing pad and your iron, and of course guys, webbing for our straps, because we are not making straps today. And this is 1 yard, okay? Our marking tools, chalk or erasable pen, our cutting tools, scissors or rotary cutter, which you do not need, and you're going to need the cutting mats for, our ruler to help us draw straight lines where we measure, our measuring tape. The fusible fleece I have for this project is not enough, so I am going to be using something else. I am using a fusible fleece too, but I am using a one that does not have gum on the side. We all know that the side with the gum is the shiny side when it comes to fusible fleece. When you go to the tailoring shop, the side with the gum is the shiny side. That is why you need your ironing pad, okay? So this one does not have the gum, and I already cut it to the measurements we are working with today. So the width is 10.5 and the length is 12 inches, okay? So that's going to be my pattern. I have cut it out already, and this interfacing is going to be what I am going to use to cut the rest, and I cut out 2 interfacings. So here are the pieces that we need. So this is the interfacing again. It is 10.5 inches wide and 12 inches long, and I have cut my lining fabric, which is the velvet, to the same measurement, okay? And I cut 2 pieces. Now for the main fabric guys, I just cut it a little bit bigger than the interfacing, because I am not going to be ironing this time around. I am going to be sewing the interfacing to the main fabric, okay? So if you're using the fusible fleece that has the gum, you know that you are not sewing your fusible fleece unless you want to, okay? So for that, you are just going to take your ironing pad and your iron, and you are going to iron your fusible fleece, the side with the gum, to the wrong side of your fabric, okay? So I am just going to take it to the sewing machine now, and I am going to sew on the edges. I have already done that. Now I am going to trim off the excess fabric that I've got, and I further went ahead to just sew or baste the fabric to the interfacing more, just to keep it in place, and that came out like a design on the main panel. So this is what it's looking like guys. So now it is time for me to fix the strap. Okay, so I am going to take my 1 yard of webbing and I am going to cut it into half, and it is going to give me about 17 and a half, which is enough. Okay, so first off, what I am going to do is that I am going to first mark half an inch on each edges of my strap. Okay, so our sewing allowance for this project is half an inch. You don't necessarily need to mark half an inch, but as a beginner I feel like you need your marks, you need your lines, so that you know what you're working with, you know your sewing allowance. Okay, because I know that my straps will fray, I decided to use my lighter to bond the edges in order to make it stay down and stay put so that it does not start fraying. Okay, so after doing that, it is time for me to figure out which side I want to be the top of the bag and which side I want to be the bottom, because the top of the bag is going to be where our straps will be. So if you have any side you like the most, let that be the top of the bag. Okay, so now from the edges, from the width side, widthwise, I am going to mark 2 inches inwards towards the middle. I don't know if that makes sense, but I hope the video is self-explanatory enough. So I am going to do that again. Now I am just fixing my straps, and when you fix the straps, you want to fix it towards the middle. Okay, when you make the mark, you want to fix it inside the mark, not outside. I don't know if you guys got that. So once again, 2 inches inwards on both sides. And when you fix your strap, you want to make sure it is straight and it is not wonky. Okay, so again, marking half an inch on the straps just to serve as a guide. Okay, you don't necessarily need to do this. Okay, so again, when you fix it, you're going to fix it towards the middle. Okay, and you want to make sure it is straight, guys. We don't want it wonky or twisted. All right, so I am going to take it to my sewing machine now, and I am going to sew on that point where I marked. So this is just going to be a basting stitch to keep the strap in place. All right, so now I am going to place my main panel right sides facing each other, and I am going to sew. All right, I am going to sew everywhere short except for the top where we have the strap. That is going to be the opening of our bag. I am going to sew with half an inch seam allowance. Now that I am done sewing, I am going to go ahead to trim my half an inch seam allowance to about 1/4 of an inch to help reduce the bulk. Okay, so when your bag is bulky and your seam allowance is large and everything, it shows during or by the time the final bag is done. All right, and when you're trimming, you want to make sure to trim the corners so that you have nice pointed corners at the end of the day after making the bag. Okay, after trimming, that's that for the main bag. I am going to put it aside so that I can work on the lining panel. For the lining panel, I am going to do the same thing I did to the main panel, right sides facing each other, and I am going to sew all around, except for this time around we are going to be leaving an opening, which I forgot. Okay, so I trimmed my seam allowances, and when I put the bags side by side, I realized, where will I flip the bag to the right side after sewing the wrong sides? And I realized, oh, I forgot my opening, which is supposed to be at the bottom of the lining. Okay, so don't forget to notch your corners rather, English. So guys, at this point I realized, oh, my opening, and I made a mark. So you want your opening to be big enough to flip your bag to the right side. All right, so you don't want to skew your bag too much when you're flipping it to the right side. Okay, and when you make an opening, that part you don't need to trim the seam allowance from half an inch to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so guys, I made my opening and I went ahead to also do an extra stitch just to keep my opening in place so that my seam does not start pulling out. I hope you guys understand that. So guys, I've got my opening now. I am going to take my main panel and I am going to flip it to the right side, from the wrong side to the right side. Okay, you want to flip it from corners to corner. Okay, and when you flip it out, you want to make sure that your corners are pointed. You can use a blunt object, something that is not too sharp. Okay, I usually use a scissors or my seam ripper. My scissors is blunt. Did I say seam ripper? No, I don't use my seam ripper. My scissors that I use to point out my corners is blunt. It's not too sharp. And when you're poking or trying to point out your corners, do not point it out or do not push the object to the point where you rip your seams and the object is coming out from the right side of the bag. Okay, you just want to be careful when you are pointing your corners. All right, so now that my main bag is in the right side, I am going to put it in my lining panel. Okay, so the lining panel is still in the wrong side. The idea is to fix the both of them right sides facing each other, so that when you flip it, when you flip the main bag or when you flip it at the end, you have your correct linings, or however the bag is supposed to be is correct. I hope you guys understand. So I'm just going to put my hand inwards to arrange it and make sure that everything is sitting right in place where it is supposed to be. Okay, first off, I am going to align the seams. Okay, so the seams of the lining panel and the main panel should be in the same place. So guys, at this point I am going to align my seams. I am going to make sure that my seams are touching, the lining seam and the main panel seam is touching. Okay, and now to help reduce the bulk when we get to our sewing machine, I am going to make sure that the lining seam and the main panel seam are facing different directions. Okay, so the lining seam is facing the right and the main panel seam is facing the left. And when I go to the other side of the seam, I am going to do it the same way. I am going to make sure that the seam are facing the same places. Okay, so this time around the lining seam is going to be facing the left and the main panel seam is going to be facing the right, to make sure they are the same way. Trust me, it is going to show at the end of the project. Okay, so now I am going to just figure out the rest of the bag, align them so I can sew. And now guys, when you get to the sewing machine, the side where the straps is, the side where we fixed the straps, you want to make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end of the straps in order to keep them in place, because those straps are going to be withstanding forces. Okay, we carry stuff with the strap, we carry bags with the strap. Okay, we want to make sure that our strap is sewn in place properly. So guys, now we are going to reduce the bulk. Okay, so I am going to trim the seam allowance from 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch, but this time around we are not going to cut the straps. Okay, the side where we sewn the straps, we are not going to cut the strap. And when we get to the point, I don't know if you notice the way I am using the scissors. When we get to the point where the strap is, I am just going to bend towards the middle. Okay, I am bending the scissors towards the middle to give it a slant cut. At that point, we are not going to use a straight cut, we are using a slant cut. I don't know if you guys understand what I am trying to say. I hope the video is self-explanatory enough in order for you guys to get what I am saying. Okay, and if you are trying to figure out where the strap is, you just flip. The strap is in between the lining and the main panel, so you just flip the lining panel. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I did that like twice. You flip the main panel or the lining panel to see where the strap is, so that you do not cut the strap. Okay, again, you want to bend the scissors slanted towards the middle and not straight when you are cutting. All right, if you like this video so far, do not forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you're a bag maker, you want to make sure to subscribe, especially if you're a beginner, because I have so much content for bag makers this year and I hope you're part of the community. Okay guys, we are done with that. So this is what we have, this is what we are looking like right now. And now I am going to pull the main panel out from the bottom of the lining. Now when we pull, we are not going to pull with all of our strength because we don't want to rip the seams, okay? We don't want to hurt the bag, okay? So we are just going to pull as gently as possible. And when you flip the lining panel from one point to the other and use your object, pencil, scissors, a blunt scissors, not a sharp scissors, and you want to use that to point the edges. So now I am just going to put the lining panel back inside the main panel, but before I do that, I am going to close the bottom short, okay? You can use your needle and thread by hand, you can use an invincible stitch, or you can decide to take it to your sewing machine and sew in order to close it shut. All right. So when pushing your lining back into the main panel, you want to put your hands in the bag and make sure that everything is where it is supposed to be, okay? Everything is in place. You are pushing it, you are aligning it, you are arranging it, and everything is in place. Now guys, we are not done, okay? This is not the final bag. We are not done because our lining is kind of pulling and we can see our lining from the right side of the bag, and we don't want that, okay? So we just want our lining to be aligned and it should be where it's supposed to be. If you have a freehand sewing machine, you can top stitch without flipping to the wrong side, but I do not have a free arm. I am using a flat bed. There is no free arm or a cylinder arm, so I am going to flip my bag to the wrong side and I am going to top stitch at the top. You can use 1/4 of an inch seam allowance if you like, or whatever seam allowance it is that you like. But the idea is to top stitch from the front because a top stitch is also like a decorative stitch, and you want to make sure that you are seeing what you are doing from the front in order to make sure that it is well done, okay? I don't know if you guys understand that. Now that I am done top stitching, I am going to flip my bag back to the right side. I am going to put my hand inside to make sure everything is in place. And for the final touch, you can decide to use your iron to give it a good press in order to give it a final and a more professional touch, okay? I didn't do that because from the moment where I recorded this video up until this moment, we've not had lights and I've not been able to do that. But that is one of the disadvantages of being a Nigerian creator, right? Right, so congratulations, you just made your very first bag. I hope you are happy and I hope you're proud of yourself. This is just the beginning. Do not forget to subscribe, do not forget to like, and use the hashtag #DIYWithJuliet on social media when you make this so I can repost it. We just made a cute bag, guys. Isn't that nice? See you in my next video. Bye.